Hello, everybody. Tyler James from Comics Launch here. And on today's live stream, I have a great interview set up for you. You know, longevity in the comics game is something that I think all of us aspire to. And so we're going to be talking about what that looks like. I've got a creator that is now celebrating 20 years of publishing under his own imprint. And he's not just letting that milestone go by without acknowledging it. He's actually acknowledging it in one of the coolest ways possible. So I'm excited to get rolling with today's show. I would like to start by bringing on my guest today, who is someone that's been on the Comics Launch podcast before. He is the coordinator of the comic art and graphic novel minor and an assistant professor at Michigan State University. He teaches the comic studio courses there, but he's also well known for his award-winning self-published comics, including nonfiction work such as his autobiographical series, And Then One Day. And he's also done a number of other projects for a diverse client list. He's worked for companies such as Moleskine, Stern Pinball, Verizon Wireless, and more. And he's just a multi-talented and eclectic artist in terms of the projects that he does.
Please.
And he's been doing this thing for 20 years. So I'm excited to bring back to the podcast my pal, Ryan Claytor. Ryan, how you doing, my friend?
Tyler, I'm doing pretty fantastic after that very kind introduction. Thank you so much for having me on again. I really appreciate it. And it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, and it's awesome to have you on here. And I have to say, it's always great to have people that I don't believe we've ever met in person, but through the power of the internet, the connections, and just being in this weird little community that is super supportive. I always learn things from Ryan, and I have to just, as we kick off this interview, Ryan is starting his or is rolling with his online tour to promote his latest project, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But I just have to throw some really great just coolness and give some props to Ryan's background game, because Ryan knows he's going to be doing a lot of streams and videos. And check out the video setup that he has there. No, at the top, that is not a transparent overlay. That is actually. How did you do it, Ryan? Like, what's going on there to promote your book?
Oh man, well, this is going to be horrible podcasting when this is in audio form. But just to let everybody on audio know, I've got a backdrop behind me with a URL that says onebiteatatimebook.com, which is where I'm trying to send everybody this month. That's going to take you straight to my Kickstarter, onebiteatatimebook.com. But I was looking up online how to include a transparent image background for my Zoom meetings, because I was going to have a bunch of them this month, and evidently Zoom does not support that. So I just said, well, I'll cut out the letters and hang them from my ceiling myself. And so that's what's behind me right now.
Yeah, love it. Love the creativity and love the backdrop. And I'm someone that has, I told Ryan, I've been saying I need to upgrade my video backdrop game for years. And, maybe in the next decade of the Comics Launch podcast, you might
I don't know. You've got this perfect green screen, gray screen going on behind you. That works.
It's a step up from what was, I'd occasionally have like a half-naked kid on the way to his tubby running around in the background.
I remember the closet background for a while. That was great.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. But all right, enough about the video talk and things like that. We're here to celebrate a milestone for you. You have a project that's live on Kickstarter right now. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about what you're doing on Kickstarter this month?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for pulling that up. And the project that is live for me right now is called One Bite at a Time. It's an oversized hardcover art book that is really heavily focused on process. So I'm super excited about this for a couple reasons. One, because of the content of the book, and secondly, for the format of the book. So starting out with the content, this features 20 years of my work in comics, illustration, and design. And in terms of design, I've done things like neon design, watch designs, fancy pancakes, cross stitching, and all sorts of other weird stuff. And it's all going into this book. But it's not just a big series of pretty pictures. It's also going to have a lot of behind the scenes images showcasing how and why each piece came to be. But in addition to that, there's a lot of specialty formatting going into this book. This is the most complex print publication I've designed in my entire life. And I'm so excited to see this to fruition. In fact, Tyler, I just got the sample books the day before the campaign launched. And oh my goodness, they're so gorgeous. So let me just rattle off a couple things here. We've got dual cloth binding. So it's not paper on the hardcover, it's actually cloth. And that's going to be dual foil stamped, not only on the cover, but also the spine and the back cover. It'll have built-in ribbon bookmarks, matching head and tail bands, gilded page edges to match the cover. And we haven't even got to the inside yet, which has things like gatefold pages, vellum overlays, die cut reveals, and more. And I know that a lot of that is sort of like printer jargon, and maybe not a lot of people understand what that means. But if you're on video, you might be able to see this. Tyler scrolling through and showing you one of these specialty items right now. But essentially, I have some pieces like my original artwork that's going to be reproduced in the book, but that will be paired with a page of full color, scanned, cleaned, and colored printed image behind it. But then the original art will have a few die cut holes in it so that it reveals and lines up with the final colored work behind it. So essentially, you can see a before in the original art, or an after in the colored version, or a before and after at the same time as the original art overlays the colored art. And that's just one of the many specialty items in this book. So we can talk about that more if you like, but I'll sort of step back and see where you want to steer this interview, Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about a lot of this stuff, and some of these design decisions, and what goes into doing something like this. But I guess here's one thing that is a topic that I just want to bring up, that you might have some thoughts on. Why celebrate milestones at all? So many of us kind of live by a one day at a time, one panel at a time, one project at a time, and then on to the next mentality. Uh, why take the time to do a project like this to celebrate your milestones? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's multiple answers to that. For one, for us as a creator, I think it's really important to step back every once in a while. And like, I don't know about you, but I'm very much like in the trenches. I want to get more work done. I want to be productive and leave some sort of a legacy behind. And it's hard to do that when you're like stopping and patting yourself on the back. But I think it's really important to once in a while for yourself as a creator, acknowledge, hey, I've done some stuff. And milestones
Mm.
are a great opportunity to do that. Outside of ourselves as a creator, I think it's also important to showcase that because it sort of legitimizes you in the eyes of your community. Like, hey, you've been doing this for X number of years. And when you hit those milestones, it's kind of like an, oh, wow moment for other folks surrounding you. Like, oh, Ryan's been doing this for 20 years, or Tyler's been crowdfunding since 2012, or, what have you. So I think it helps to add some credibility to us as creators by celebrating those milestones too.
Yeah, I think so, as well. And something that I'm doing inside the Comics Launch Pro community, that I just placed an order for some of these cool silver versions of the Comics Launch enamel pin. For years, I've sent out little Comics Launch enamel pins to every member of our community to commemorate their first successful launch inside our community, just to really be a part of that. Let's celebrate the win. And if I know it's not a habit for everybody to do that, so it's a little way to do that. But I asked Clay just the other day to start compiling a list of creators that are in our program that have hit the $100,000 mark in funding raised on Kickstarter, and there's quite a few,
Wow.
and also quite a few that are like, probably should be there within the next year and a half. And I'm like, you know what, that's another cool milestone to celebrate. It was like, I think passing $100,000 was one of the things that gave me the confidence. You know what? Not only could I get out there and put a few articles on the internet, but I could jump in and I could do a podcast, and I could stand up and raise my hand and just say, hey, I know this thing. Come learn from me, and I know that everybody on that list also is looked at that way, and they also have people that look up to them, and they have paid it forward, and they've given advice, and they've been on panels, and they've gone and continued to like spread that ripple and positive thing. So that's another cool milestone that I'm going to just add to what I celebrate. And so I've got some, I will be sending out some some silver pins as soon as they come in
Yeah,
to
that's
a number of
killer.
creators. Yeah.
And not only start the podcast, here we are 400 some odd episodes later. This is nuts, Tyler. So anyway, congratulations to you. I hope you take a moment too to step back and realize everything you've done for the community.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little crazy. Like when you see like the stats of like, most podcasts don't make it past episode 7 or
Right?
whatever. And so like, if that's the case, probably in the top 1% of at least from longevity, if not total downloads or subscriber base or all of that stuff. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
killer.
well, so let's I want to talk challenges of this project. I mean, I can imagine that the idea sounds great. Like, I'm going to put out a commemorative 20-year hardcover. And that could be an idea that would get you really fired up to do. But then the daunting task of, hey, how do we actually like, how do I pull this thing together? What to include? I mean, even at 250 pages, which is a big book by all accounts, 20 years, you've got more than like probably had a lot of stuff that, you could have left or you had to leave on the cutting room floor. So, I mean, how did you go about just determining what needed to be in this thing?
Yeah. Well, I was really trying to think about what's going to tie all this together besides just me, besides artwork coming from my hand. I really wanted this book to have a heavy emphasis on process. I'm an educator. I teach at Michigan State University, as you mentioned earlier. I have just teaching in my blood. There's a lot of teachers in my family, and I sort of feel like this is a little bit of an educational arm of Ryan Claytor. It's not just showing images that I've made, but it's pulling back the curtain and showing how those images came to be. So that was really a big determining factor of what got included in here, because as I went back 15, umpteen, 20 years, some of that process work did not exist anymore. And I
Mm.
really wanted to include that for all pieces. So some of it was, does process work exist? And there were a number of pieces that I wanted to include that I just didn't have anything for. So that was one of the determining factors. But I also wanted to bring some, hopefully, helpful tips to the comics launch community in case they are thinking about doing something like this. Um, Things that I wish I would have put into practice before undertaking this book. Things like committing to using a sketchbook for all thumbnail images. So I
Mm.
don't know about the artists in the community, but for a very long time, when I needed to do a thumbnail or figure out what a sketch would look like, I would literally just reach across my desk here, grab a piece of computer paper and scribble it out. And then when it was done, I would literally throw it in the trash. Like it was garbage to me after that. I
Mm.
didn't look like anything. All it was for me to understand composition and placement of elements. So I started keeping a sketchbook. At least I tried. I
Yeah.
would originally get like a very, very nice sketchbook, something that looked pretty, something that was really fancy. And ultimately, that was really intimidating for me. Like this beautiful book, and I'm putting this chicken scratch inside. I was like, this deserves better. And
Mm.
so it wasn't a great place for me to keep that. So I now use these just little quasi disposable sketchbooks that are filled with pages that I can just scribble and scratch in. You'll see stuff from A Hunter's Tale. You'll see, thumbnail images that are just nothingness. But because I did not spend much on this, and it's just glorified paper folded in half, I feel more able to put things in just anything in there. So first recommendation for me would be to commit to using a sketchbook for all your thumbnails. I did that for about the latter 5 years of this book, and it made my life so much easier. Uh, a second thing I would mention is to make a periodic practice out of documenting your projects. So for me, I was going through 20 years of stuff all at once, and that was a huge undertaking.
Mm.
But I think if we as artists were to take this on, sort of like our quarterly taxes, like set up a monthly or a quarterly practice to just see what did you do in the past month or 3 months, and then create those pages. And that's going to accrue, you know, one bite at a time as you make those. And
Mm.
before you know it, you're going to have a book on your hands. I've got a
Yeah, so
few
I
other
love
tips here I'd love to
that.
share whenever
Yeah, we'll,
you're ready.
we'll dive in. I do want to just flag a couple of those things. I've had the exact same challenge, and I almost feel like all fancy sketchbooks should come with an instruction on like page one, scribble on this.
Yep.
Because yeah, I definitely had the same thing. It was like, well, I've got to wait for that perfect idea to get rolling, or that I can't waste pages. This book is too nice.
And something
And
so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so I love that you found a solution to that by just, hey, you know what? It doesn't have to be the prettiest book. It just has to exist, and I have to use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Man.
I think that probably is why uh, the default for so many is to just grab a sheet of paper, because if you crumple it up and toss it in the trash, you're not going to feel bad about yourself about it. But the value long term of that process material, especially when you're trying to either put together your collected editions or your omnibuses, or you're just trying, or many creators like yourself may find yourself teaching a class at some point, or showing that, hey, this end result is actually the process of a lot of things that don't look nearly so nice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely love that tip. um yes and then the documentation and building that into your process. One of the things that I've done as a practice at the end of every year is I try to go back and capture all of my big insights, big lessons learned, ahas, big and I do that by compiling where I've been capturing them throughout the year. But it just and then as you go, you sort of have a best of collection that
Right.
you can fall back on. So definitely building that process into it. And we've talked on we've talked before about how there are products that can be made from the work that we're already doing in other ways. And so this is another great example of that. But
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
other things that sort of came to mind that you think would be valuable for the Comics Launch audience.
Yeah. Well, as artists, we do not only create stuff for ourselves, but we also create stuff for clients as well. I have a lot of client work in this book that I'm really proud of, from the neon signs to the watch designs. I've mentioned it before, but in creating this book, I had to go back and speak with every one of my clients and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this big publication. I'd love to include our work together. Would you give me permission to include it in the book?
Mm.
And that was a big pain in the butt for me. So moving forward for myself, and I would encourage comics launchers as well, to include permissions in your client contracts to reprint whatever work that you're making for them. So that's going to save you a whole lot of time going back and trying to find all your clients from the past and ask
Mm.
permission. That's going to be a practice I use moving forward. And another thing that I was going to mention is that you can release annual updates when you compile all your work from the year. So that could be like a smaller or even a serialized version of these art books rather than waiting 20 years and making a
Mm.
250-page book. But then after a few years, you can compile that together into something larger. So that's going to mean additional sales. And also, some conventions like San Diego Comic Con, Comic Con International, require annual proof of work. And as comics artists, sometimes we don't have things annually, but
Mm.
if you're compiling this, then you've got that annual periodical publication that you can send out to them and maintain that annual work. Yeah.
Yeah, another great tip. And I guess it's similar to like updating your portfolio with your newest stuff for a lot of freelance artists. I know artists that are going for portfolio reviews, trying to get work from big ones. Like a lot of editors have long memories, and if they've seen the same page for the last 5 years, they're probably not going to be. They're going to be wondering what you, the artist, have been doing to grow over the past couple since they saw you last.
Yeah.
So that's definitely another great tip there. So I want to talk a little bit about the process of putting this book together into its final format. We've got a concept inside the Comics Launch Pro program where there's the minimum lovable version of your product and then the grandest possible vision of the product. And that's something that I definitely present because a lot of the creators that come in are, hey, no audience to speak of, no track record to build. And I know that you probably came into this project saying, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to my vision. And part of being 20 years in this thing is earning the right to go for that greatest conceivable bells and whistles version. So I'm not dinging you at all for going to the mat for your vision on this. But what I can also say that people that might want to do something like this is that you've kind of earned the right to build up to something like this through some of your past Kickstarter launches. You've got smaller comics in terms of page count. You did a hardcover. You did do a hardcover edition, a little bit of smaller book for a previous launch. So it does feel in a lot of ways that you've been building up to something like this as well. Is that sort of how you see things?
Yeah, sort of. And I'm not discounting the minimum viable product that you preach. In fact, my last Kickstarter campaign for mirror drawings, I used that theory to the T.
Mm.
So, just to rewind a little bit to last year to mirror drawings, I had a book of illustrations that I wanted to publish, and I had no earthly idea who, if anyone, would be interested in it. It was way out of left field from me. I'd never done anything like it before. And so I thought, okay, what is that minimum viable product? Just like you talk about. And so I said, I really want to do a hardback book for this mirror drawings because I knew in the back of my mind, I was going to produce one bite at a time, this big hardcover art book we've been talking about in 2023. So I want to get some experience under my belt with hardcover printing. I'd never printed a hardcover before. So this was kind of like some training ground for me. So that minimum viable product for me was hardcover and number of pages was 48. It was black and white throughout. I could, make it sort of a lean, mean campaign if I needed it to be. So that was my starting point. But I wanted to do a bunch more stuff with that book. So I had all of it lined up from foil stamping the cover to adding ribbon bookmarks to adding additional pages to adding even more pages after that. And when everything was said and done, we accomplished, I think it was 10 or 12 different stretch goals to add so many bells and whistles to this book.
Mm.
Ended up being twice as big as I originally advertised it for the same amount of money. So I mentioned all this to say that was a campaign where I did exactly that. I started with a minimum viable product, didn't know what my audience would be because it was way out of left field for me, but people showed up in, a big way. And so because of that, I was able to move that product up in terms of production and scale. Moving forward to the current project, One Bite at a Time, this is a project that I was more confident in than mirror drawings because it was work from me. It was work that people were familiar with that have been following me for 5, 10, 20 years. And it was a big celebration. This felt like a book that needed to be what it was. In addition to that, I had been talking with my printer for months, almost a year, getting this project ready. And I had so many things. So we had so many conversations and had so many um, samples produced that I did not want to say, hey, printer, you know what? I'm not quite ready for all of that. I just wanted to present it to backers on Kickstarter and say, hey, this is going to be the thing. If you want it, come aboard. And if not, I'll see you in the next project. So
Yeah.
that was sort of my mentality moving into this larger celebratory book that is One Bite at a Time.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the printer? Because I know, finding the right partner that's going to get the vision, that's going to be willing to answer those emails, that's going to be willing to uh, engage in those, flights of fancy about what if we do a die cut translucent in the middle of this on page 142, but then like, is there anything you want to say
I I
about who
don't
you
know if your listeners know how true that statement is that you just said. That is so incredibly important. So, uh, taking things back to basics, when you're self-publishing your own work, you need to find a printer. And when you find a printer, you don't just spin a wheel and point to one and go with that. You want to talk with a few printers, and usually a few means like 3, 4, 5, half a dozen people. And then you kind of find a printer that specializes in what you're doing. Well, I wanted something that was ridiculously specialized, hardcover, fabric covers, dual foil, all the stuff we've talked about so far. And so, all that to say, I had a list of over 2 dozen printers that I solicited quotes from. And that may sound like crazy talk, and maybe it is. But if you think about it, essentially you have a list of specifications that you want for a book. And once you have that first email written, it's just a copy and paste into however many other printers that you want to send that to. And because I knew this was such a specialized product, I did not know which of these printers would specialize in this thing I wanted to do. I found about, top 2 or 3 printers and asked them for samples of books that might be kind of similar to this, and also products like the fabric and the foil stamping and things like that. And there was one of them that just came out head and shoulders above the rest. Not only did they send me samples that were very close to what I wanted, but they also sent me, like, here's a copper foil, but here's an entire booklet of foil stamping that you can choose the exact color that you want. And they were so receptive to all my ideas. Every month or so, I'd come to them and I'd say, I'd have some new cockamamie idea and say, hey, can we do a horizontal gatefold? And they would never tell me no. They always say, yes, that can happen. And here's how much it is, so that I could decide if that was worth it or not. Some other printers were like, oh, that's going to be too much money. You don't want to do that. Like, try to steer me away from things. And I really enjoyed them giving me the the power to make the decision, essentially. So yes, I have nothing but good things to say about my printer, who is on my Kickstarter page. If you want to know more about him, you can go to onebiteatatimebook.com. Again, that'll take you straight to the Kickstarter, onebiteatatimebook.com.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. It's a lot, there's a lot to, and not every printer is going to be up for that, that sort of challenge, but
Yep.
some, definitely get really excited about producing something that is, hey, this is the vision, and let's make it happen. And so I'm excited that you've put that out there.
Me
Uh,
too. Hey,
but
can I share something with you?
please do, yeah,
I so the day before my campaign launched, I got samples of the book. Can I
yeah,
show this real quick?
yeah, yeah,
So these are looking so gorgeous. I don't know if you can tell this or not, but it's actual cloth. It's dual foil stamped. You can see the shine on here. There's just, oh my gosh, so many specialty items throughout here from, let me see if I can find some of the gatefold pages. So here's an instance of, I make fancy pancakes for my son when the pandemic hit, just to give him something to look forward to each week.
yeah,
And that ended up being kind of a tradition for us, to the point where I've got over like dozens and dozens, maybe 100 different pancakes that these are going to be in the book. And I really wanted to have this like enveloping feeling as you open this up and see, wow, there's just a ton of material in here, in addition to all the neon signs I've designed. And I won't bore you too much. I don't want to spoil it, but just to show you, these came through in immaculate shape. I cannot wait to share these with people. So that came, and there's also an option for people to get a custom clamshell book box for the book. So this is perfectly fit to the book itself. It's color matched exactly as the book is, and even the sides of the book have a paper that matches the copper foil gilding on the edge of the pages, which, if we can see that, I don't know if you can see the copper gilding there, but nicely matched there as well. So the printer just knocked this completely out of the park. I cannot wait to get this into people's hands.
wow, that is really something else, Ryan. And you can just tell the size of that book, man. That is a beast.
It's a big
Uh,
boy.
so like, and that is something that, for a project like this, you probably definitely want to get. I mean, is that so? That's like a one of one that they printed in advance for you, or yeah,
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. So we had a couple different rounds of samples. First, they printed out some samples, and we had a video call where they literally went over each and every page, each and every specialty formatting option that we had. Uh, it was great. And then we went to a very, very close to production book, like I just showed you. And then, there's some minor revisions that we're going to make moving forward. But essentially, we've got it at this point. So once that Kickstarter ends, I'm going to place that order when the Kickstarter funds arrive, and we should be good to go.
yeah. And do you so for something like this, when you order, like, do you have a target already in mind of print run? Are you going to wait and see what the Kickstarter does? Are you hoping that you have is this a book you want to keep in stock for the next 20 years, or like how are you sort of thinking about that? Because I know one of the because this is probably one of those projects that going back to do a small reprint isn't an option for, right?
Exactly. That is exactly right. So I want to make sure I get the quantity ordered correct, so that I'm not left in a lurch and don't have enough, but also so I'm not lining my basement walls with them either, But
Yeah,
that's the power of Kickstarter, is that you have this pre-order model, and you can kind of gauge, like, okay, I have 500 people interest, or I have 5,000 people interest. It's, really such a game changer from when you and I started making comics. And I remember doing print runs of 1,000, 2,000 books, and I still have a bunch of them left over.
yeah,
And if I would have been more savvy to my audience number at the time, which I was really just wildly guessing at back then, I would have been much more savvy about the number I printed. In addition to Kickstarter, I'm also trying to do that dance between crowdfunding and the direct market. So this book is listed in Diamond Comic Distributors right now over the
mhm,
month of November. So once the Kickstarter ends and I have Kickstarter numbers, I'm also going to have Diamond Comic numbers, and I'll add those together and make some calculations and see how many I need to print. But minimum order is going to be 500 books for me. And if there's greater interest, then I will certainly order more. And yes, I hope to have this book moving into the future. I don't want to overprint it so that I'm hanging on to it for another 20 years, but I will have it for some time after the successful conclusion of the Kickstarter.
Awesome. So I also see that you are leaning into that multi-talented artist side of yours and offering some kind of cool book upgrades on your campaign that you don't always see on Kickstarters. What can you tell us about how people that want like an expanded experience, what they can get, or to add a little art to the book?
Oh man. So there's a number of reward tiers that I'm really excited about. I mean, to start off with the base physical reward tier, this book and all its bells and whistles is going to sell for $59.95 when all is said and done. That's the retail price.
Mhm.
For the campaign, I want to thank people who are jumping on early and give them this book for 17% off cover price. So that's $50. And that includes free US shipping. So this arrives at your door, $50, no muss, no fuss. That deal is not going to be offered after the campaign. So I want to encourage people to jump onto that. But moving forward, we've also got a couple of not add-ons, but the next reward tier has a couple things that I'm like unreasonably excited about. I've never produced a patch before, and I've always wanted to. And yeah, if you're able to scroll down this page just a little bit, there's a close-up of this. I have these in hand now, and they are 100% stitching, which means you're not looking at the fabric itself, like it's stitched all over, and it's gorgeous. So I've already got that ironed onto my own backpack, and I can't wait to share those with people. And also on this tier, we've got a raised copper foil print that is 8 by 8 inches. It's got rounded corners. It's limited, signed, and numbered. And all that's going to come with the book signed. So this will include an autographed book. And you get all that for just $25 more. And the next tier up is a book club tier. So essentially, with that one, you get an invitation only book discussion with me and only the other folks who back this particular tier of the Kickstarter campaign. So I'm going to give a presentation on some of the behind the scenes of making this book and talk about some of the intricacies of how it came to be. I'll open it up to Q&A afterwards, and we can talk about any of the artwork or the production behind it or how you organize stuff like this. I'll be available to answer any questions, and we can just sort of have a chat, because I love talking with people. I love talking with people about comics, not just my own comics, but comics in general. So I'm really looking forward to that tier. And then I'm trying to give a couple reward tiers to the retailers among us. There's a retailer gift pack where if you're a retailer, or if you just want to give a bunch of really awesome gifts, there's a reward tier for that gives you 50% off cover plus free shipping, and some upper tiers beyond that. But I'll let folks explore that
Yeah.
on their own time.
Yeah, and it looks like you're doing these acrylic paint sketches, and they're all sold out, man. The demand
Tyler,
is there.
Tyler, I have you to thank for that. I shared my campaign with you before it launched, and you gave me a lot of really fantastic suggestions. And I was able to take a few of them in the limited amount of time I had before moving forward with launching the campaign. And this was one of them. You said, "Hey, we've got this gap between $150 and $300. It'd be nice to have like an individual reward tier, something around the $200 mark." And so I was really racking my brain for what that could be, and created this tier. Again, I had no idea how this was going to go. This sold out in the first day. I couldn't believe it. I thought these were going to be around for a while, but they all got snatched up. So Tyler, thank you for your suggestion.
Well, there you go. $1,000 right there for you, Ryan.
I owe you, man.
Yeah, no, glad to see that helped out, and glad to see people were excited for it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about just this concept 20 years and just the concept of longevity in comics. And I've been going through some old emails and looking at some old books and moving things around. And meet a lot of creators in this game, and I, a lot of people say, "Hey, I haven't heard that name in a while," or "Wow, I wonder whatever happened to," etc. Um, when you think about building a career in this industry and in this, and just as an artist or as a creator for the long haul, what are some things that you have think led to you being able to be here 20 years later, and still rolling strong?
Oh man, that's such a great question. It's such a it's such a conglomeration of things. You know, when you're starting out, you're so raw and unsure of yourself. At least
Mm.
I was. I think other people are too when they first start out. And it's so important to have some of those early adopters to your work, a retailer, a friend, a new reader. And I remember really taking that to heart and thinking, wow, like maybe this is something I can do. In addition to that, I think there's just a compulsion as an artist, like, you have to do this. I remember there was a time in that 20-year period, there was about 5 years where I did not put out a book. Like, I did not have any comics to show, and looking back at that time, it made sense because I was trying to start a comics program at a Big Ten university. I was teaching classes. I was proposing new classes. I was proposing a minor course of study. I made a podcast. I was the director for an annual event. I was doing so much stuff trying to get this on the books. And it was no wonder that I sort of neglected my own personal work. But I mention all this to say, in that 5 year gap of no Ryan Claytor comics, I started feeling uh, really bad. Like, I started feeling
Mm.
sad. I started feeling like a fraud. I'm like, I'm teaching these classes and I haven't made anything in half a decade. Like,
Mhm.
what is wrong with this picture? It's me. I'm what's wrong with this picture. And I think that all goes back to say there's a compulsion. Like, if I did not have a compulsion to make work, I would not have felt like that. I would not have
Yeah.
felt sad. I'm just like, oh, I'm doing my thing. It's fine. But I've discovered that I need to nurture that. I need to nurture personal projects. I love helping people, but it's so important for me to have an outlet for my own work. Like, Coin Op Carnival, A Hunter's Tale, mirror drawings, one bite at a time, all these things that have happened in the past few years that were not happening the 5 years prior to that. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think having a compulsion to do it also helps move you forward because there's something inside of you that just needs to make work.
Yeah, I think that's so it's an important thing, and those sort of creative voids in our lives, like, or those itches that aren't getting scratched, eventually they will come up and bite us, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And it's definitely something that I've battled with, like the amount, because I do feel like as creators, like, the more you create, the easier it is to create, but there's at the same time, like, the muscles, the energy, the sheer will to pull something from your head into the world, whether it's a comic or a podcast or a course or anything, like, there's only so much that you have there, and it can be pretty, you can use that up trying to get new things off the ground. And I definitely found that, like, with building Comics Launch from the ground up, and then trying to take and level up Comics Tribe, and you know something had to give, and the thing that ended up having to give for a good jump of it is like, hey, this is the Tyler James Show comics that you're just rolling forward on, and you're doing everything on. And whereas, but as you said, it is very nice to be here, getting back into the game and having a new issue that I wrote this year,
I
right
was
in
just
my
gonna
hand.
say, I was so happy to see a Tyler
Yeah.
James joint come out this year. I was really
Yeah.
excited to back that because I feel like I feel like a kinship with you in that we both have an interest in sharing knowledge and talking with people, but at the same time, like we need to nurture our own creative interests. And I hadn't seen that from you for a while. And so when Epic came out and I heard you saying this was coming, I'm like, oh man, this is so great. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you on Epic and such a killer campaign. Can't wait
Yeah.
to get that issue in my hands.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, a big shout out to Matt Zollman for being the driving force towards bringing that book back. But yeah, timing and kismet and all that stuff. It came together, so I'm excited to get more of that out into the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So another thing that doing a 20th anniversary hardcover collection, Kickstarter now, obviously for several years now, has allowed us to shine a nice light on our backlist through their add-on menu. And as you were sort of pulling together your add-on menu, and you have a number of past works from the Elephant Eater backlist that are available to add to pledges. Is there anything or any older titles or books that in particular that you hope backers will maybe give a second look to, or that you're really, that as you were putting together this list, you're like, oh yeah, I hope I move some more of these?
Yeah, I'm I'm always a fan of my more recent work, and so A Hunter's Tale, I think, is one of the best things I've ever done. That was a poem that was written by my grandfather
Mhm.
over 40 years ago. It's about empathy in these two very disparate subjects, a hunter and his prey. And that's a poem that's resonated with me for a real long time. And I finally felt like my artistic chops, my storytelling chops, my like I was able to do it justice. For a very long time, I felt like, man, I can't even touch my grandpa's words. I'm not good enough yet. So I feel like we got to a similar place, and I'm so proud of how that came out. But also, Coin Op Carnival down there at the bottom is a publication that I collaborated with my best bud, Nick Baldridge, who is just a virtuoso tech when it comes to old pinball and arcade games. And even if you're not into old pinball games, there's a ton of stuff in here that I think is really going to resonate with a lot of people. Like, we had a conversation with the most prolific pinball designer of all time. His name was Wayne Nyans, and that interview occupies about half the book. It's a 64-page book. And we talked with him not only about his time in the coin op industry, but also his time growing up, his time in the war. And there were so many stories in there that I've heard from people who said, I don't care about the pinball work, but that interview was amazing. And the entire book is fully illustrated in full color. There's full illustrations on every single page. I'd say about 20% of the book is full-blown comics. I am just over the moon about that book. It's been 5 years since it came out, but I just picked it up the other day. And have you ever had one of those moments where you pick up this is going to sound horrible,
No.
but you're just like, man, I was firing all cylinders and like, this is pretty all right.
No, I mean, my wife will make fun of me because, like, this happened when I was like, all right, well, it's been years since I've written any epic. I gotta go reread what I did, and I'm just sitting there laughing to myself at my own jokes, which isn't, that's not uncommon around this house, just as it is. But I'm like, yeah, there was something here. Let me. I'm digging what old Tyler did, or younger Tyler did.
Yeah, and it's funny how sometimes you'll even see stuff like, I don't even remember coming up with that, or how did I come up with, like, I wouldn't have thought of that
Yeah,
now. It's weird
yeah,
how brains work, like, in different ways at different times. It's so funny.
yeah. I've often found, like, it's weird where, like, you also give a lot of times artists, like, they'll draw something and then a month later they look at it and they hate it, because it's like the feeling is, well, I just did that, I should be better than where I am right now. But that same artist looks at something they did 5 years ago, and they give a little bit more grace for it. It's
Yeah,
like, ah,
yeah.
that was, I, I'm much better now, but I, I see that that kid had talent.
But there
I'm
was
glad,
something
I'm glad he
there.
stuck
Yeah,
with it, right? Yeah.
totally.
So yeah, it's weird artist creator brain, right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, you've spent the last year working on this, looking backwards. So what do you hope volume 2 that launches in 2043 is going to include, Ryan?
Oh man. Well, I hope it includes a lot of stuff that I had pre-existing permissions from clients for and sketchbooks that are well maintained.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's going to be a whole lot easier moving forward. But I want it to be more comics first and foremost. I want it to be more exploratory art. And we'll see where all of my interests take me in the next 20 years.
Absolutely. Well, you are less than $1,000 away now towards your $9,000 goal. 4 weeks about to get this thing fully funded and then some. Now, I guess because this thing is so far along and you really stuck towards, or you were really keen on making sure that the product itself is the vision. Like, did you put any effort into coming up with some stretch goals or some ways to make this deluxe, ginormous, crazy thing even better? Or will we expect those things to roll out, or are you going to sit on your laurels once this thing gets funded?
Yes, indeed. There's some stretch goals planned in classic comics launch fashion. I'm going to keep those quiet until the project actually funds.
Oh man.
But I do have some stretch goals lined up once this thing fully funds. But yeah, we're sitting at about 90% funding right now. And if you want to jump in on this project, it's at onebiteatatimebook.com. That'll take you straight there. Onebiteatatimebook.com.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing some great insights and just for sharing your work with the world, man. We need more creators with the heart of a teacher, but also willing to do the process, document the process, and share the process, so that we keep inspiring others to go forward and bring their art into the world as well. And I know you've been doing that for 20 years plus. So keep up the great work, my friend, and good luck with your tour for this book. And I'm excited to see how it all comes out and works out for you.
Tyler, thank you so much for being a part of my tour, having me on your show, teaching so many people, including me. I'm a comics launcher, very proud, and I'm so happy to be a part of this community. So thank you for forming this. Before you, nobody was really talking about comics entrepreneurship in a very organized way. There was such tiny, disparate articles that we would have to find on stuff like this, but I feel like you've not only created this course, but you've created a cohort of people that support one another. And I think the comics community is the most supportive group on Kickstarter. And, again, we have you to thank a lot for that. So Tyler, thank you for everything you've done for the community. It's I know I tell you that every time I'm on this show, but I mean it. I mean it. I mean it. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Ryan. I received that, and it definitely makes me feel good, as I'm a little under the weather this week, as you probably heard from the interview. People are listening, but it's always nice to hear that. So I appreciate you, and yeah, thanks for once again coming on the show, sharing some insights with the whole community. Best of luck with the rest of the launch. Everyone out there in comics launch land, watching the stream or catching the replay, definitely check out this book. Check out the campaign design, and I hope you will give it some time to consider how you might commemorate your 20th anniversary,
Or any milestone.
or literally any milestone. Hey, if you've been doing this for hey, I mean, that is the thing about Kickstarter. Like, even if it's just a launch, like a Kickstarter launch is a built-in way to celebrate the milestone of creating something. And
Yeah, please don't wait 20 years to celebrate yourself.
absolutely. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. And everyone else, take care. We can't wait to see what you launch next. Bye, everyone.